This is my favourite type of video to do: workshop, storage, prototyping. No script, very little plan, and taking you lot along with me live. It could end in failure or something really cool. I have no idea at this point. So let's just start and see where we get to. Not so long ago, I made a bunch of these. The design couldn't be simpler. It's just a box with a nitrile rubber hose cutting in it that holds your tools. You pop your tool in and it clamps it in place. It wasn't so long ago that I said this is the best way to store your saws. I was wrong, or at least I think I was wrong, because I woke up this morning with an idea. My thoughts are, I can get all my saws in one place, easy to access, taking up less wall space. Well, that's it. Too many fingers. But let's just say, I think I can make it better than this. You see, what I was trying to achieve with this one was that I was trying to beat where you have all the saws in a row, all the way along your wall, looking beautiful but taking up a lot of space. But as you have to draw the saws out from the side, it brings its own issues. I want something where I can always take the saw that is directly in front of me, and I need it to be for 7 saws. This is one of those builds that's going to start out as a prototype and then, well, I don't know. We're going to see. So let's just start making, and I'll let future voiceover Mark do his thing. If it goes well, I might see you during the video. So this is where no plans comes with no guarantee of results. And I needed to find a way of arranging the saw blocks to make them as space efficient as possible, both in themselves and where they place the saw and its width of blade. The biggest downfall of the last one was that the saws needed to come out sideways. And this means that it took up a lot of space on either side of the holder. So my first idea to combat this is to make the new storage spin. And arranging the blocks around a post offers up the best overlap potential. And spinning means that the chosen saw can always come towards you. And I can hopefully cut the post to ensure the back of the blade holder is as close as possible to the post itself. And therefore the holder's footprint is as small as possible. And I've had a bit of a brainwave, I think. An octagon post. 8 holders, 8 sides. I'll explain once I've cut it and I can actually show you it. And to do this, I'm just going to rough cut the corners off rather than trying to make it too accurate. Will it work? I'll let Live Mark tell you. So, I didn't expect to be coming back on quite so soon, live. I tried to make this into an octagon. A heavy cut on the first one didn't help, but the rest of it came out fine. My idea, the reason an octagon is that I was going to start with 4 blocks around the top. And then I realised the saws need some space above to come off this, so you need to put them a little bit lower down, because obviously the blade's going to come out. Then I realised that if you do that, you can't fit 2 on any one side. So you need to stagger them. Now I can't stagger them if it's a square block. So I figure if I do it like this, then I can stagger them. The problem is then now, trying to fit 4 around the same plane, or around the same area, is getting really tricky. So this is either going to get derailed straight away, which it feels like it is probably not the best idea, or I'm just going to take this, I'm going to hack into it to go back to that nestling effect where we had the 4 slightly overlapping blocks and just see what it happens. But at this stage, at this point of the build, I'm going to give myself one shot. If I get the one set of 4 round, then I'll carry on. If not, you'll see me with another plan. Now I'm sure there's a much more accurate way of doing this, but when I'm prototyping, I really like to just keep on moving. So I'm taking referential measurements and using them to figure out the internal amount of wood I need to leave. This would be far easier with a dado stack, but with a sled and a partially raised blade, you'll get there in the end. It is a lot of passes though. And they need to be cut on all 4 sides. This will then allow me to nestle the 4 holders as close to the centre as possible without the blades getting snagged. And as the post is an octagon, I can make a second row beneath, but offset it by 1 face to the side that I've already cut, I think. But first I need to see the holders on the central column. I don't think I'm ready to call this a success just yet, but as a concept, I think it's got legs. Now I can't really test it because, well, Well, I'm going to test it. Now remember, it's only got double-sided tape, which isn't exactly sticky, so I can only use a lighter one of these saws. But I have to say, positioning and for a first go, next stop, if I can get blocks in between, which now I look at it, doesn't look great as a concept because I think they're going to overlap the path of the other blocks, which really makes me a little bit sad because this had some serious amount of legs. I'm going to take 10 seconds to think about this. By that I mean I'm going to cry a little bit and then think about it. See if I can make anything of it. God, I knew that was going too well. Still, it's a great way of holding 4 saws and taking up more room than we did before. Right, I think I've come up with a solution based around the fact that you don't have to have the slot on the same side of each of these. If you imagine what's on the inside, there's a ramp here and the dowel goes down the ramp and clamps. Well, if you do it this way, where the ramp's this way and the dowel goes that way, suddenly you've got a left hand and a right hand one. And then if you overlap them, well, then you've got a little bit more space saving. Now, it's a little bit crude because the wood in the middle is not the right shape. But if we overlap left and right, left and right, left and right, and obviously the same on the back, then we can get 8 saws all hanging on the top. And the maximum width this is going to be is around about, I think, 27 to 28 centimetres, which I'm okay with, because then you've just got to make space that's a cylinder of diameter 28 centimetres. And that's okay. I think this might be the solution I've been looking for. Sometimes the simplest solution, working with what you've actually got already, is going to be the best way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock that up. I confess at this point that although I'm excited for this build, I'm also feeling that it could fail at any point. So I'm going to tread carefully. These blocks are fairly simple and quick to make, but I don't want to waste all 8 if this fails. But I also want to see it all loaded up. So what I'm going to do is glue them together so I can see them on the square column that I've made. Then we can look at it together live. Because there are a few stumbling blocks I want you to dodge if possible. What you want is first of all that the saw strips where they live don't overlap. Then the depth that they go in doesn't overlap the piece next to them, and the piece next to them doesn't overlap with the piece next to that. Around and round we go. For this to work for me, I needed 50mm by 50mm. I didn't have it. So I had a 40 by 30 and I added on another 10, so now it's a 40 by 40 or something like that. Anyway, solution, just pad out behind these with some 5mm plywood. Height-wise, everything like that. Honest answer, don't know. My idea here is though that I need space to be able to put one of these in. It holds tight without ever crossing the top here, and I've got loads of space beneath. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower these down just a touch because I've got some room down here, and then I'm going to glue everything on. And that's really the point of no return. I did make one realization though when I was doing this, and I'll tell you while I construct this. It doesn't matter how deep you make these blocks. So long as the blade sits right at the back of them, the depth of them isn't going to affect the size of your overall footprint, because honestly the blade of the saw is the same regardless. The width of these blocks does. So if you want to go for a smaller dowel and really skinny these down, there's going to be more efficient ways of doing this. I will never have more than 8 hand saws. And a very quick note about how I'm prototyping here. I tend to use a lot of CA glue and this fast set wood glue. It just keeps the build moving along nicely. I'm not impatient, but I can't say the same for live mark. Now I'm incredibly impatient, and this isn't something you should do if you're doing something like this. However, this is currently held on by 3 dabs of CA glue and a bit of this. I could wait about 25 minutes, but I really want to see how it looks with all the saws on it. So I think we all know what I'm going to do. Oh no, this is upside down. This entire section, and this isn't for camera. All right, let's just look at it while it's there, because there's a lot of space beneath it that I'm going to utilize. Right, I'm going to flip that upside down before the other glue goes off. So far, so good. Fortunately, with CA glue being brittle and the wood glue not curing, I could just pop the holders off and set it right. And the base comes next. This is lazy editing right here, but there's no trick to me cutting these circles. Large, medium, small, and this is what I cut them with. I told you it was lazy editing. Now I need to make a strong joint between these and the post, and I want the post as close to central as possible. And the easiest way I can think of doing this is by making a template and routing out the shape of the post itself. It's going to leave me with rounded corners, but I can really easily round off the post corners pretty quickly. I like to hog out a lot of the wood first with a Forstner bit, and I'm going to leave just the tiny slither at the bottom of the base so the column doesn't pop all the way through. And the process is just the same for the second circle too. The third can be done by using the second circle as a template, and that's the base done. We've got our 3 pieces cut, they overlap perfectly, and the idea here is whatever the base of this totem pole or whatever it is going to be, it's going to sit in this. Whatever length it is, it'll sit up from that. That gives me room on the bottom to put Lazy Susan hardware, and then the top I haven't quite figured out yet. But I'm enjoying this bit first. This can really be whatever you want it to be. It could be drill bits, it could be router bits, you could put your squares through it, you could hang stuff off it. I want to have my obscure router bits that I use a lot that aren't part of the set on the wall. I want them along here, and I'm going to put enough holes so I can grow into it, as it were. Because there tends to be a lot of router bits that I buy and then they lie around and then I can't find them. So it's going to solve that while also solving the problem of spinning the whole thing. It's a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, but hang fire. Yep. It was never meant to be bigger than the thing that inspired it. I'm feeling just about confident enough right now to glue this all together. A lot of the support of the holder itself comes from this base, so having it nice and snug with a good joint will really help to sturdy up the build. And checking for square here is a little bit tricky, but I'm not looking for perfection. Close is close enough. So we've just hit a really fun stage. This has had all night to cure, so everything should be set in place, and the saws are up there, as you can see. I haven't put any bits in here because I'm pretty sure this isn't the bit that's going to fail if this whole thing goes to pot. But it is quite tall. However, the pull test, everything feels pretty strong. What I do want to do is figure out how we're going to stick this up on the wall. A bit like we did with the spinning Dalek in the corner. I am going to cap the top. What I do want is when the saw goes up to put it into place, you don't want to accidentally get it too high because then it's going to catch on whatever the bracket is, and when you spin it, you risk bending the saw. So what I need to do is just put a cap on the top so when you put the saw in, it hits the cap and then you drop it down into place. That's what I want to do. But first, I have a tried and tested way to fit the spinning hardware to the base. But having the same on the top, like the tool Dalek, was tricky to line up. I figure a simple dowel through a bearing, held in a bracket, is going to make life a lot easier. And the only thing I can't get wrong is setting the dowel square in the column. And I can't drill square, not with a Forstner bit and no drill press. This actually was a bit of a head scratcher until I realised I can use my router and a template bit. I'm going to start it off with a Forstner bit, but after that, and it is fairly tricky to see here, but I'm routing the template, then loosening the catch and dropping the router while it's still on into the hole, a few millimetres deeper, then routing out the circle again. I'm genuinely not recommending this is the best way to do it, but I can't actually think of any better way. I've taken a lot of careful drops and shallow passes, but the results are pretty good. And here's a tip. If you're using a template on a small surface, if you can't use double-sided tape, just use CA glue and then clean it up later. Or if it won't be seen at all, even better. I'm also adding the cap here too to stop the saws from sticking up too far and catching on the bracket. And while I'm on a roll, the simplest brackets I can think of. 2 pieces of plywood, butt jointed, screwed and glued with a hardwood cross piece for strength. 2 smaller ones in the case of the upper bracket, as it isn't weight bearing and they get in the way if they're a little bit too big. And a Lazy Susan for the base. And this is the exact same way I did with the tool Dalek. I made my mistakes on that one, so hopefully this one will be easier. One of the biggest mistakes I made was not leaving access to the screw holes for the upper mounting, which I've corrected here from the get-go, and spacers are vital to stop any rubbing between the Lazy Susan hardware itself and the brackets. Fortunately for these, I can use my laser, but honestly, well-placed washers would do a pretty good job, I think, too. And to reiterate, just make double sure you can access those screw holes once it's all together, or it isn't a very easy job from here on out. What is an easy job is the top one. I can countersink the bearing from the top and then just drill a hole for the dowel with enough diameter to not have the bearing rub on the wood. Cap it and you're done. Or are you? This doesn't feel right. Live mark? This is not something that you're going to hear on YouTube very often, especially on woodworking channels. But I've got to this stage and I can safely say now, I've failed. I like to be honest with you. I'm not going to try and hide it, not going to try and make it different. I have not met the #1 criteria that I set for myself, and that was to take up less space than the old sawtill. And I've even done the maths. But first, let me tell you the problem I've got. My plan was that this would only stick out 30 centimeters away from the wall. The reason for that is the ultimate tool cabinet that I made, 30 centimeters from the wall, and it doesn't get in the way. Now, the carousel in the corner that this was originally inspired from, that sticks out 40 centimeters. 40 centimeters is an issue. It's fine in the corner, but anywhere else it's an issue. I measured to the edge of the blade on the Western hand saws, not the handle. With the handle, it needs to stick out 40 centimeters. If it was just the blade, it's 30. So, we've failed. And in many ways, that's absolutely fine because it was a fun build, it was a great experiment. Unfortunately, it's led me to this epiphany, if you like. I love having these vintage hand saws, but throughout the entirety of this build, and probably the 3 before it, I haven't used them. Instead, I've picked up the Japanese pull saws, which happen to take up a lot less space. So we've pivoted. This is only going to have the Japanese hand saws on it, and a few other things that I'm going to add to it in a second. I've got the brackets painted black, so you'll hardly see them against the backdrop. Probably should have gone for grey because the wall's grey. We're just having a mistakes day today. Anyway, this just needs a tidy up and I'm going to fit it on the wall and then I'm going to show you. Brackets are simple, one under, one over. We've shown the mechanisms. I'm just going to throw it up on the wall. And the next thing we're going to do is get a win out of this. I'm going to show you this and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with these because I still like having them in the workshop. If I'd have set out today to just house my Japanese pull saws in a cool spinning tool holder, then this would have been a really successful prototype. I could come on here and say that I've just made the most efficient sawtill possible, but the maths just doesn't agree. If you create a box around the space that each one of these sawtills needs, then the original would need 59,800 cubic centimeters. This one, if I included the Western saws and the depth it would need to the wall, would need 124,800 cubic centimeters. Even with just Japanese pull saws, it still takes up 68,400 cubic centimeters. That's about 9,000 cubic centimeters more than what I was setting out to replace. But the last one had a couple of magnet strips on the front to hold any loose drill bits, whereas this new one can hold 50 router bits or drill bits or whatever you decide to use it for. And if I do say so myself, it looks really cool, but it is a fail. If you're going to build one yourself, I made a couple of tweaks that you're not going to see in the live build up to this point. Such as the longer saws have got a little brace at the bottom to stop the handles from vibrating when you spin it. And as you can probably see from the background, I've added some finish and a bit of stain on the plywood to make it look nice. I did mount 3 blocks to a backer to be able to store the Western saws down here. And technically, that space wouldn't have been used for anything else. So I'm pretty happy with that. And in case you hadn't guessed, despite its failed status, it's here to stay. Over the past 3 years, I've spent multiple videos chasing better options. The best this, the best that, best storage for your hand planes, best storage for your saws. I realise now that actually none of that matters. These little blocks are a win. This build was fun, and that's enough. Thank you for watching this far. I hope you've enjoyed the process, my wins, my losses, my successes, my failures. If you want to see any of the videos chasing those better options, there's a couple up here. If you click on them, I'll see you over there. Thanks a lot for watching.